A motion to go into open session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now, you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A moment of silence. Thank you very much. So let the record show that we have all the board members here. Mayor Williams is with us. Austin Calaman, Robin Davis, the general manager and assistant general manager, and Mike Hoffman, our legal counsel. So the consent agenda, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So it's 5-1, or 5-0. Received the Inframark report. Mike, you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jeff can't be with us. He's, Hills is doing the pump switch out at pump station 3 this week and, they're running late. So Jeff needed to make sure everything was tied up. Things are going well there. We had the bypass hooked up yesterday, first thing in the morning, and, had some issues with the bypass pump getting clogged when we were on floats. So we manned the station overnight till this morning. Hills let us know that they thought they'd have one of the pumps going by end of day today, but that didn't happen. So we're trying to get the guys are trying to get the floats working on the pump station. They worked yesterday, but we didn't have the levels right. And I think they sucked up some rags in the lower part of the wet well. It's got a clog. So if we get the floats online, all the point watch alarms are still online. So if there was an issue, we get called out. So we're hoping to have one or both pumps online tomorrow, and they should definitely be done by the weekend. DENREC was on site today for our compliance inspection, scheduled compliance inspection. So everything seemed to go very well. They were there from 9 to 3:30. They had Jenna had a couple of trainees with her, so it's why it seemed to take so long. But it's a good FaceTime with the guys and her and the regulators. So like I said, everything went well. They were very happy with the cleanliness of the biosolids. You know, they had made a comment during their last inspection. I think we moved a dumpster. The county moved a dumpster, and there were a little bit of biosolids underneath it that caught their eye last time. So guys made sure to have everything very clean and went over well. So okay. To my report, the oxidation ditch, the crack's not seeping. Austin continually emails the company. We're having a hard time getting them scheduled. We said, I think we said that the 15th of May is the latest that we were comfortable with them starting. That way they'd be done by the 22nd. That gives us a week before Memorial Day, but they had never responded back to Austin. So not sure of the status of that happening this spring. So I think we ran all the numbers. I have a calculation where we subtract the county's flows so I can see what our flows are. So I mean the plant can handle it. You know, with one ditch online. It's just, there's not a whole lot of buffer. So.
And I think also had mentioned that the crack seemed to have tightened up again.
Yeah, we all looked at it last week, and the guys look at it every day, so it's not seeping.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the seepage before was very, very minor, but it's strange the way that crack seems to move with temperature, time.
You think it just seals with debris? I mean.
Well, or calcium,
Wow.
maybe, salt, calcium, so hopefully, but yeah, there's
But you do check it every.
yes, the guys walk around back every day.
So do we see any risk of waiting till the fall at this point?
I think there's been a risk for a long time that we haven't, but so. Why can't we do it later? I mean, because you need that ditch out of operation, is that?
I mean, I think we can do it later, it's just, our goal was to get it done in spring before season.
I
And
mean, why can't you do it later into the spring or summer? Because you have to take
it,
out.
it would, I mean, theoretically, it would reduce our capacity by half. I mean, not actually,
Should
but
have taken- My question is, you have to
yeah,
take
you do.
operation.
The whole,
Yeah.
one ditch, yeah. So half the biological process would be offline.
How long would it be out of operation?
I think for basically a week, because it's only a day, I think, of repairs, but then it needs to cure for a couple days. So if they started on a Monday, or if we had everything prepped, they start on a Tuesday, then, we theoretically could fill it on Saturday.
When was that first noticed?
It wasn't quite a year ago, I don't think. It was about a year ago, though. Richard had noticed it and brought it to Austin's attention, I
Do we
believe.
think that it was occurring? Do we think that it was occurring then, or do you think it's been there for a while, never noticed?
Well, there's several similar looking cracks, or not necessarily cracks, but the concrete's what you spalled, or but none of the other ones had moisture associated with it. So yeah, so we didn't always walk around there. When Richard noticed that, then we started making that part of our daily procedure to walk back there, because it really wasn't a whole lot of reason to walk back there,
Yeah.
prior to that. So
Do you know, I'm sorry, wasn't this on? Okay. So we really don't know how long it's been there. Do we think it was much before that? Do you think it's been there for a long time, or we think it's just occurred, I mean, relatively recently?
yeah, I mean, many times I walk the whole plan. I go around the EQ tank, when I come up for my weekly visit. So I had never noticed it before, the moisture. So, I mean, I don't think that it was seeping. I mean, like I said, there's very similar looking cracks on that backside that, we weren't that concerned with because there was no moisture. But yeah, I mean, it's you really can't say, but I don't think that the condition where it was seeping existed for a long time.
Does GMP have any perspective on the risk of this? I like trying to ask you questions you don't know, by the way. I'm not having a lot of luck with it.
Not much different than what Mike's saying, I don't think. I mean, we've been working on this with him for a year. It's definitely not Inframark, it's not Austin, it's not GMB with the supply, kind of went, this crack was going to be repaired, and then we noticed other issues underneath the platform. So it took a long time to get pricing on that. And now it's taking a long time to schedule it. So I'm going to take a crack at it again tomorrow.
Crack at it.
Don't do that.
But yeah, I don't really have too much more. to
Is there
add.
any temporary external application that we can do? I realize it's best if it's done in the unit inside, but is there any?
They gave a
Okay.
proposal to do the fix from the outside, but I wouldn't do that just because you don't know what the condition of it is. And once you start scouring away, especially, you're also going to hit water because you're about 5 foot there. So you're going to have to go about 7
I just
foot.
didn't know if that was a good temporary solution until we can can get in there. and
Most
take
of
one
the time,
units down.
temporary solutions are less expensive. In this case, it was way more expensive to do that, so. And we were also going to use this as our test case of like sort of get an idea of what this compartment of the reactor look like and, you know, sort of extrapolate what we find here out into the rest of the tankage too.
Yeah, and just to amplify on that point is that this is one train, the outer train, but we're only gonna do the one bay now. As Charlie just said, so we could get a look at what's going on the inside and be able, you know, get a general assessment on what needs to be done, whether we need to go into the other ones. And, you know, the temporary fix, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the weepage itself is the issue. I mean, it's not running out. It's just localized dampness in the concrete around it. It's more, is it indicative of something structural down the foundation level? And you can only get to that on the inside without massive excavation
That
on
was
the
part
outside.
of it, yeah, to see what's going on beyond the grade line that's outside. Otherwise, we wouldn't really know.
Because I think everyone has heard, you know, the ditches go down 10, 15 feet
Yeah. Well,
below grade.
more like 10, I think.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 15 feet from the top, from water line, I think, and it's 5 feet
Yeah.
exposed, right? So there's a whole lot of it below grade that we can't even see what's going on.
And then there was a material that was put on the walls when the plant was upgraded in 2008, and that material did cause some issues flaking off the wall. And we were monitoring what that impact was on the membranes themselves when the original membranes were in. And I don't believe we've had a condition assessment of the internal of that ditch since that was on there, and we have a known kind of scouring of that material.
I mean, it's not a great answer to your question and to press's concerns. I just want to get it fixed.
Is there anything that we should have local, just in case it does go bad? I mean, is there anything we can do? I don't know.
I mean.
Flex seal makes it look very easy on people. Flex seal? I'm kidding about that.
I mean, even the fix that we're talking about, I guess, could be done in an emergency situation, but from the outside. These guys are the experts, though.
We could do like Dorshak Dam did in Idaho. They just dropped a piece of plastic down on the inside and let the pressure hold it against it.
Mhm.
They operated that dam for like 10 years that way until they could figure out a permanent fix.
Well, it's, you know, it's worrisome, you know, whenever you have a crack in the wall like that.
I know we're doing everything we can to
Yeah,
get these guys.
Yeah,
I don't have great answers for you on that part of it.
Okay,
I wonder if there is an application like that, though, that can seal it up. I don't know who wants to go in there and do that, but
well, I mean, going back, I mean, I was there when they did it at Dorshak Dam. They just put weights on the bottom of it and let it unfurl and then let the hydrostatic pressure hold it in place.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I think in a pinch with something like that could certainly be done. But I think things would have to get pretty dire before, because that you really would have a major structural issue then.
And the ground's kind of holding it, you know, keeping, not holding it together, but it's keeping it from being stressed. I mean, it's surrounded by earth. I agree with Austin. If they excavated, that would be the worst, probably worst thing that we could do. Excavate it from the outside. So I mean, we'll keep pushing, and you know, we can do it. If that's,
Well, is there anything we could do to escalate this in? I can't remember what the vendor's name is.
How many emails do you think I've sent?
did they respond?
All three of us.
Yeah, they were on top of it, and then obviously I think we approved everything. My memory is right in February, and then we reached out, and then we originally got a date There was an estimated date and then we pushed and pushed and pushed. And then they came back and said it was gonna be the end of May. And that, we didn't feel comfortable taking that train offline as we kind of heighten into the season, considering, we've had this, we've worked for a solution to make sure that we would be available to pull that train offline. I mean, Inframark guys did, and we were ready and able, and then they came back and just said timing wise.
So when would you propose to do it? Or when would they propose to do it in the fall?
I mean, we didn't
Haven't got that
get
far.
there yet, but I mean, it's.
Hopefully we have a pick of any.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume, yeah, we'd be able to get it scheduled this, right after Labor Day. This far out, so.
On the electric panels that's in progress, can you give us any more details on that?
I don't know what they got done this week because I wasn't able to talk to Jeff because he was with Tenrec all day, but we purchased a panel for the lighting and the headworks for the lighting from United Electric. And Andy was going to do that change out. So I'm not sure if that happened this week. Some of the things that he's been doing, we had some poor lighting around the plant. So fluorescent lighting, he put some LED lamps in, low cost, remove the ballast and put LED lamps in. The guys, we send everybody out for confined space training the beginning of April. So he's working on what kind of materials we have to get for the sump pumps, working on that and plan to do it safely. You got some grounding rods. So if anything's charged underneath the water surface there, it would go to ground. So that's one of the projects he's working on. Just troubleshooting mostly pump station control panels. We're chasing some issues in panels, just replacing relays, that kind of thing. So
Has any measuring been done yet?
just on motors, he let me know that the small megger that we got was specifically for the motors. So as far as for the cables, that would have to be something we'd either rent or that would be a bigger piece of equipment for the cables throughout the plant. But yeah, so.
And do you have a schedule for when you're going to do that?
We don't have it scheduled now. Right now we have pump station 16 is a priority. We're looking at options to replace the controls there. We found a free fabricated control panel that would work. And we also engaged United Electric to give us a price on a control panel. They've been lagging in getting us that price. So for pump station 16 is one of our priorities that he's going to be replacing the controls. But I don't have a good list of what he did for April.
Okay, I would ask that, the next meeting, come back with a schedule for, the measuring in particular.
Okay.
We've had several failures.
Yep.
And they've never been measured since they were put in.
Mhm.
And I think that's a risk area for us.
Okay. Yep. I'll get that done. Back to my report, filters, we finished cleaning train 4, put it online yesterday, and we'll be prepping train 1 hopefully at the end of this week to be pulled beginning of next week for cleaning. Or train 1 has higher TMPs, so that's a priority to get that pulled and cleaned. We are also looking at the TMPs don't necessarily seem to correspond with how dirty the filters were for 4 specifically, and they did drop a good bit after we cleaned them. But I brought somebody in to give a price on calibrating the pressure transducers that calculate the TMPs, and the gentleman said that you're better off replacing them with factory calibrated probes. So we're looking to get pricing on new probes for the trains. And I believe they've all been online since the startup of the membrane system. So Pump Station 2, we accepted a proposal from Harry Caswell to replace the wet well piping in Pump Station 2. They completed that on Monday. So that's all done. Everything looks good. And then we also, BPW issued a PO to breakwater to fix the hatch at Pump Station 6 on Connecticut Avenue. They're trying to get that done before the season starts. That's not going to be a big issue with traffic because they're going to remove it, put a steel plate over it, and then take the hatches back to their shop, weld new hinges on it, and then bring it back. And then we met with Austin and GMB at the plant. So the county had let us know that the biosolids that we're sending are too wet. They prefer to have us send liquid, and then they would treat it at their plant, because what happens, they have a biosolids dryer. Our biosolids from the drying beds are wetter than their biosolids from their treatment process, and they have to slow down their dryer to dry our biosolids. So they prefer to have liquid. Austin had been in discussion with the county, and they will pull 6 tanker loads a week. But their drivers currently, when CDI pulls a load of liquid, they throw hoses up over the side. The county does not want to do that. And it's, good practice moving forward. If this is going to be, a solution moving forward, we put a permanent outlet to pull sludge from digester 2 at ground level. So old sludge line was abandoned coming out of the pump station in the digester building, and BPW came out and cambered it, and it extends out 25 feet from the digester building. So GMB is going to write up some specs or some plans to excavate that 90 up at that 6-inch sludge line and put a valve and cam fittings there, so the county can just hook right up to that 6-inch pipe.
And Austin, can you talk a little bit about the moving from solids to liquids, the cost impact on us?
Yeah, so right now, and Kim can elaborate too, is that we're playing CDI when we waste and our beds can't keep up and we can't process the solids that theoretically we would like to. And so we subsidize that by pumping liquids, in which CDI comes, just like Mike explained, goes in, pumps liquid, and then they go and take it off site to be treated. Obviously you pay a premium to do that, and their costs are not going down. They still instill the fuel surcharge, and their rates are continuing to go up. By doing this, Mike pulled a calculation together that said if we accept, or if the county accepts the 6 truckloads a week, it should basically handle most of, if not all of, what we would utilize throughout the week, meaning we wouldn't be wasting. We still have the beds there if we want to utilize them, but for the most part, it would handle all of our flow. So from a cost basis, we could significantly reduce, because the county's doing this under the existing solids handling agreement at the cost that we're paying right now for solids handling.
So going to liquid waste hauling is going to reduce costs, reduce the fact that we can do it more timely, rather than the beds not be subject to weather going forward.
And we have the redundancy of having the bed should we need to pour for, whatever reason. It's just another relationship that we have with Sussex County that we kind of moved and diverted, and it's helped us out.
And just one last thing, working on our portion of the NPDS permit renewal, have that finished up this week. I think Austin's got pretty much everything on his end done. There's some stuff he has to submit with the permit application.
Just so everybody knows, so the way that it works is you have to submit that permit 6 months in advance to the expiration. And so that 6 months was actually the first week in May. And so because, we reached out to Denrec as far as process because their application has changed almost every time you resubmit, it's changed. So for us to get a better understanding what was needed, we reached out. I think we started this in January. So it took a while to get a hold of the person we needed to talk to because that person was getting ready to retire. And so what we did is, and it's typical when you deal with these permits because you're talking 50, 60, 70 page applications, plus you need to have all the attachments that go along with it. So we requested an extension for, I think, 2 months. We extended it to July, I think, and it was granted, no issues. So our permit expires October of 23. So we're working towards that. It's going. It's a lot of stuff.
I know I say this about every other time, but if you look at our stats for that wastewater treatment plant, BOD in pounds can be 288. We're less than 16. Total nitrogen, we can average 100 pounds and it's 15. It's less than 16. Total phosphorus can average 2 and it's 0.05. So that plant is continuing to just do a great job. And thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Where do we stand on the Headworks bid? When's that going to be accepted?
It's advertised and I believe it will be set up to be accepted at the May board meeting.
Bids are coming in before then?
I believe it's like 10 days prior. They're supposed to be opened. I want to say it's the 17th.
The pre-bid is next week and then there's always 2 weeks after that. So yeah, middle of May. I don't remember the exact date.
But finally,
17th.
yeah.
Couple of the questions. Can you talk a little bit about the foaming issue that
Yeah.
you've been experiencing?
Yeah, it's a little better. And that another thing that we asked GMB to look at, and Josh actually came up with a really good idea. Josh from GMB, there's a foam pump at the treatment plant, and in most Xenon MBR applications, that foam pump would pump directly to solids handling. So we would get rid of that foam. That's not the case here. It used to go to a wet well and then got pumped back to the head of the plant, which doesn't really help us because it just reintroduces it. So within the process building, we would be able to run like a 2-inch or a 3-inch line from the foam pump and connect to the existing 6-inch wasting line just with a saddle or whatever. So it should be, a pretty easy project. It, may need some kind of DENREC approval. I'm not sure about that, but that would allow us to pump that foam directly to the solids handling, to the anoxic tank.
Are these just these foaming, one when it was cold and now warm? Is it, do you know what's going on?
This year it was really bad at a lot of plants. And it, I think it was because the weather was up and down so much. Because we haven't experienced it here in the, since we were back in 2020. So, but just as an MBR, it's because you have, you can run such a high mix liquor, it makes us susceptible to these filaments, these microorganisms that cause foam. So I think, we weren't expecting it to happen. So we were a little late to maybe address it. Now we have chlorine online that we can use this foam pump, and then you can inject chlorine into the foam to kill it. So I think if we got in front of it earlier, it probably wouldn't have been such an issue. Today, when DENREC was there was no foam. So that was good. But
Good thing.
we do, I mean, in Pennsylvania, we had it was a bad year for foam too. It's generally associated with a biological nutrient removal plant because you're manipulating the microorganisms with giving them air and giving them DO and taking DO away from them. So
Yeah, except, to press point. we've not seen this before, so I mean, it sounds like the proposal of you're wasting the foam is the right way, but it's just strange that in all these years, we,
Well, I think it has occurred because there's a drum of some kind of defoamer in the garage. So, I mean, I can't, you know, it was just an assumption, but it may have occurred before.
okay. Couple of other questions. On the electrical side, you have the pump room exhaust fan had gone out and you had to repull a new cable and conduit for it, tie into the breaker panel. Do we know what was the cable?
They took the power feed, somebody at one time took the power away from that exhaust fan to supply power to a blower that the system that's pulling air from pulling a vacuum to mitigate the corrosive atmosphere in the headworks building. So it, you know, just power was gone from it. So somebody had taken that power feed.
So this exhaust fan has been offline for a long period of time then?
Yes, yeah. I mean, since we've been there, so that's just one of the things with our electrical inspections that's getting noted and
Oh.
addressed.
No, thank you. Was not aware of that. Several of the pump stations, you got notes that say, well, pump station 17. Pumps are both okay, no alarms, extremely heavy fog, needs pumping ASAP. Can you expand on that?
It's the fats, oils and grease that's fog, fats, oils and grease that are floating, that coagulate and float on top of the pump station. So, and we give once a month, we give Emmett a list of pump stations to clean with the back truck.
And pardon me for my ignorance, I've never seen the expression heavy fogging related to wet wells. Is it actually
It's-
atomizing?
It's FOG, so it's an acronym
Oh.
for fats, oils and grease. And that's the operators are inputting those notes into our CMMS. So that's, you know, they might be a little.
The first
So
one
the
I read,
FOG goes to the CMM.
the first one I read was on the beach side. It's like, so they had fog in the morning.
They
Thank-
cleared by the afternoon, yeah.
Thank you. Sometimes ignorance is, and I also want to, you know, I think I did last time also. Thank you guys for the quick response on pump station 8, you know, the driving up to get the pump, get it back online. I think that was a real good effort.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Anyone else have questions? Okay,
All right. Well,
thank you very much, Mike.
have a great evening.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
You can stick around.
Ah, congratulations.
Okay. Will the president speak to his report? We had our 5th wastewater treatment facility workshop last Wednesday. And we presented clarifications on several items. I will note for the record, the attendance has been going down. We had 14 people online or in person, besides staff and consultants. I think, Sharon, we still have had 0 public comments. So I'd encourage anyone, you know, if you're interested, listening, you know, we're very interested in the feedback from the public on what we're doing and where we're going. We will be having our 6th workshop on May 17th And that will be here in city council chambers. It's a change of venue for where we usually do it because of a conflicting meetings. And then there'll be a 7th meeting back at the Rollins Center in June. So, and based upon some of the comments we had last time and some of the inquiries we've gotten from the public, we're developing slides to present to expand upon the impact on rates going forward for the various options so that people can understand what their rates would be like under each of the options going forward. That was in slide 23 in the number 2 presentation we did the end of last year. That Austin put together. But I think it, like some of the other items, may have caused a little confusion. And so we will revamp that part of the presentation and do it in May. I attended city council. We had meetings with the county relative to the wastewater treatment plant. Press and I in Austin have met with GMB on the water tower sizing options. And I forget.
We're gonna talk to that.
We're gonna talk about that.
Item 8.
And we had hazardous waste take back day on Saturday. It was well attended. The police department said they got about 150 pounds of drugs. So it was quite a bit up from last fall, but last fall was down from prior years. So the police department said that in their contacts with the other places that have done it, they also noticed an uptick this year. So we only had like about 5 old style TVs returned this year. So the number is greatly dwindling. And as we're getting older, I'm very thankful for that. Lifting those things is humongous. But we did have a good turnout also on the chemical side. So we were having another one this fall.
I think everybody, as always, was very appreciative of the service. So unfortunately, I noticed in the Gazette the day before, I think, or I guess it was the Friday before, it said Lewes is having an event. You got credit for it. So it didn't say the Board of Public Works, but.
And the city does handle the police department, the drug portion. And the gun take back that we had a couple of years ago. But it's a joint effort between both the city and the BPW to do this. And I want to thank all the staff that was there that helped out. They do a great job, and I think it's good to get in front of the public that way. I attended a mitigation meeting, but Press is going to talk about that later. And I did attend the city meet and greet last night, and the city did I think a very good effort. They had tables set up around the room with all of the departments there, explaining recycling, trash pickup, parks and rec. I mean, across the board. So.
And next year, I'm saying, like we said to you last night, probably a bit good for you all to have a table there next year when we do it, because the residents really enjoyed it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was all I had. So, Austin, you're up. General Manager's report.
Another busy month. Kim, Robin, and I have been working with the University of Delaware, and GMB is now worked into this mix. We were originally submitting for a mitigation grant for some mitigation measures at 4, 8, 3, and 5, which were the pump stations that GHD took a look at. After we kind of dug into that, working with the university on it, one of the things that we noticed was we didn't have truly an engineering set of plans that would scope out exactly what we would be doing, the materials that would be used. And so we kind of took a different avenue at the last minute, about a week ahead of time. And what we decided to do is take a look as part of the mitigation committee's work. We kind of sectioned out and started looking at all the pump stations that reside in the floodplain and taking and implementing some of the things that the mitigation committee has discussed and will present today as some topics that we can potentially designing for the future, sea level rise, risk mitigation. And so Chase Barnes with the University of Delaware did a no man's effort, and he's been coordinating everything. And really what he did is he put together a framework for the grant. We're submitting for $250,000. It's a 90-10 grant. 10 of it's funded by us. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, we get the funding. And what we'll do is we'll use that and we'll work with GMB to put together a study looking at those pump stations in the floodplain and what needs to be done at them. Kind of condition assessment that would ultimately lead towards a design and construction piece. But this is just one of those avenues that we're starting to explore for some sort of subsidy when you deal with the MHI and going through WEAC and not necessarily grading high simply because the MHI in Lewes is higher than what it is in other communities around here. So we're trying to explore and work, and Josh and Mike also looked at some IT grants, some physical security grants that we're trying to look at. So we're just utilizing University of Delaware to their full capacity, and it's been great. We also, you probably saw us out there yesterday on Savannah Road. We had a collapsed sewer lateral that we were working in. It was very deep. Our guys took care of that. There's a smaller kind of section that's beyond the curb work that they'll work on probably next week. They also were working on, we had Teal Construction out helping us on a project with a leaky valve on Cedar. And they were out there today. We thought we were going to get it all done today. It didn't necessarily happen. It was a lot of work. We were actually cutting out 2 valves. Our crew did 1 valve. Teal's crew was going to do another, and then we did an insertive valve, but they had to pour a concrete kicker. So they're going to be back next week. There'll be a small outage to cut that one section out. The old valve put a piece of C900 in with 2 high maxes, and that should be all buttoned up, and hopefully, we'll be good through the summertime, knock on wood, and for many years. Pump station 3 valves and pumps, they're working on that. They were hopeful they would get one of the pumps in by today. It seems like they didn't. So hopefully they'll get at least one in tomorrow, and hopefully everything buttoned up by Friday, which would be good. That'd be complete replacement. We have the bypass capability now. We'll have the pumps in, the new valves in. So that'd be very good for that station. Well 1 is in service and producing very well. No pun intended. And well 3 is lined and is waiting for the pump to arrive. So once that pump comes back, we'll be able to put well 3 in on the list to be in hand, and that will put all 5 wells back online with 2 of them completely redone. We continue to do our work with the water tower, the common header, the canal crossing, all the planning grants we have open. We'll have the water condition or the water pipe condition assessment. Hopefully that comes back in the next couple of weeks, which should probably be its own meeting as a workshop, because it would be a lot of information, and really that will pave the way into what your capital budget will look like in the coming years. Besides that, I'll say, Sharon, do you have anything election related?
No, we're going to talk about election later.
Yes, good point. I'll give it to Kim and then I'll go to Josh.
All right. I know.
Yeah.
All right, we're going over some financials. We'll start with the monthly for March. Oh, thank you. We'll start with monthly for March. As always, there's a lot of the same problem areas. There's just a couple I wanted to highlight for line 12, repairs and maintenance. Electric redid their garage door, and they did some transformer preventative maintenance. The sewer replaced their coolant heater and the hoses and belts related to that. Line 13, professional and contractual. We have the GMB invoices hitting for the master facility planning and the beachside study. Line 24 for impact fee, we are almost 100% over budget. So now it is looking more like the original budgeted numbers. We were just too early, I guess. We are eager on that. And line 27, change in market value, we gained almost 34,000. And overall for the month, we did better than budgeted.
So on line, whatever it is here, with our, I can't remember the name of the company now, UBS.
Mhm.
So we lost, is that, I can't even see, is that 33, 34?
We gained
So
34,000.
gained 34,000.
Yeah.
So I just looked at the S&P over that month. The S&P was up 3.51%. The Dow was up 1.89%. It just seems that we need to relook at this, and maybe this is something the finance committee can go after. Given how the stock market did, even the total stock market was above all those. It just seems that we're lacking on the financial aspect with UBS. Is that something you would agree with, or?
Yes. See if we can get together with UBS and figure out how they can better address our needs rather than just going on automatic.
Okay. That's the only thing I had.
For quarterly. The comparison to last year is a little skewed right now because we haven't done the audit entries yet. But overall, our income increased over $400,000 on the bottom line. For the differences in budget, we have line 10, wages and salaries. The water employees are now splitting their time between sewer and stormwater of when they're actually working on those tasks. Line 12, repairs and maintenance. Electric had their transformer maintenance, which is actually $60,000 higher than last year, which is where you're going to see that we're doing preventative maintenance as opposed to reactive. Line 13, professional contractual, water repairs and repaving, and then the GMB work and 120 water payment. For sewer, the Inframark rate increased and we are making payments on the wastewater treatment plant long range plan. And overall for the quarter, we did better than budgeted. And on my other notes, we had 4 consecutive quarters with bottom line income and 2 consecutive quarters with increases in change in market value.
And $662,000 in losses on investments.
That's year to date.
Yes, right.
I'm on quarterly.
Okay.
You stole the show.
Sorry.
Now year to date. Line 13, professional and contractual. The only thing that's different on there is for water, is also including the couponing that was done. Line 26, the grant revenue. We had money coming in for the water main assessment, the water tank, and the canal crossing. And line 27, change in market value, we lost $662,000
Seen that, thank you.
over the fiscal year. And just to end on a terrible note, overall, we had a bottom line income of about 1.7 million, but counting the actual cash flows of 937,000 in loan payments and about 4.2 million in construction and progress payments resulted in about a 3.4 million loss. And if we want to go by utility, the worst performing was about 2.5 million loss for sewer, 880,000 for water. Electric lost 160,000 and stormwater actually made 27,000.
The construction project was Powhatan Road because that was completely funded through our monies and not through any sort of funding mechanism like WEAC.
And just to harp on that $3.4 million on the cash graphs, you can see that we did a withdrawal of 3 million, direct correlation.
I guess also if you can expand upon 2 things. One of the ones is Kim mentioned the transformer testing that happened last week. Can you bring the board up to speed on what they preliminary found?
So the testing was actually done last year. They came back in this year, did kind of a preliminary testing, but a lot of it was actually replacing the bushings that are on one of the transformers. And then they're looking at potentially building those bushings, and then we would take those bushings and keep them in stock, or actually replace the bushings on the other one and then rebuild those so that we would have them, simply because the supply chain is still absolutely, it would amaze you still what the lead time on some of these things are. So a lot of it is preventive maintenance. You know, we continually get our system thermal tested when it comes to the electrical side. But on the transformer side, because those two are only two transformers, we tend to be, you know, ultra sensitive, get the testing done. And if there's anything that needs to be done, plan accordingly.
And they did take a sample of the transformer oil, I assume.
I believe so.
To be able to, because everyone remembers 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3, we found acetylene and other off gassing in the transformer oils. They came and they found loose connections in the bushings inside the transformer. And the subsequent testing they did, the levels were down. But testing the oil is a very good condition assessment for transformers, for insulation and for degradation. So it'll be interesting to see when the report comes back. Do we know when they'll be?
Hopefully pretty soon. They were still working down there last week.
And on Kim's high point, her really, really bad news. Do you want to talk that I guess we are doing an impact study, an impact fee study. And that is, you know, one of the things that we're looking to address there.
Yeah, and impact fee studies, and then we're doing our cost of service study.
Right.
So
How far are you along with that impact fee study? I know you've been working on it, right?
Well, there's
When are we going to see that? Because I think I keep saying that's a big number that we're losing.
So
We
it's
should-
going to be coupled with the cost of service study. They suggested to do it either in tandem or after the cost of service study to understand everything that's going on.
How much time does that involve?
if I had to take a guess, you're probably, 12 to 14 weeks, 12, 16 weeks. But we have a meeting on Friday, which is our kickoff meeting, which talks about the deliverables that they're after. And so
We've been talking about doing an interim adjustment. I mean, I just see that money we're losing our shirts on some of that stuff. Should we do an interim adjustment? I mean, we know we're well below where we should be. Wouldn't it make sense to adjust somewhat higher to cut our losses? Because we know we're well under where we should be.
I think, Mike, if you want to rebring this, the issue was without having a study to base what you're setting your impact fees on, it becomes.
Yeah, I think Press's point is that you all know you are collecting well under.
Well under.
The challenge is what do you raise it to make sure that you are justified? And to your point, intuitively and conceptually, if you are well under, there's room to make an interim adjustment and completely understand. I think the recommendation from staff is that since the study is underway, get the results of the study. But at the end of the day, the will of the board be the will of the board.
Do you have any idea how many charges we'll be making during this period that we'll be losing more money on? I mean, how many new connections will there be?
I mean, we well conservatively estimated on the impact fees, but you're at the reliance on transformers, and transformers are very hard to come by. I mean, I was told on one development that was supposed to arrive this month that it was going to be August or September.
I mean, do you think it's 10 or 100? I mean, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
I really don't. I have no idea. I I mean, if you're looking from, it's at the developer's will, how they're developing property and how they're paying. So, Tower Hill, I could see. But Tower Hill's building out phased. Lewes Waterfront Preserve, they can't until they've received transformers. They can't bring anything on because they're not receiving COs until they receive transformers. Lewes Waterfront Preserve or White's Pond, same boat. They don't have transformers or anything. Dutchman's Harvest don't have transformers. Fisher's Cove does not have transformers. Those are the ones off the top of my head that are the biggest, really. I'm going to say 100.
So it sounds like, from a supply side perspective, a lot of these projects are slipping. And so if we can get it done in 12 weeks, 3 months, by the time they
Yeah, but it's been slipping for a long time.
Agreed,
I mean, so
agreed.
people, that have slipped, some of them are coming back online now.
Right.
So, I mean,
Just to interject here on one other thing to consider. So this is the financial report, and especially on an issue when you're dealing with impact fees. Certainly, if the board wanted to entertain even an interim increase, you would have to notice that and
Sure.
talk about that in a publicly noticed agenda. So certainly relevant to the topic, but I would recommend that you flush out that discussion in a noticed agenda.
thank you.
Talking about the insurance, I know we talked about insurance and potentially releasing money back into the reserve or from the reserves. And I think you had an action item, I think, of looking at the contract to look for holes or gaps. Are we any closer to getting to that?
Yes, Austin.
I was going to say, our insurance broker is taking a look at that. I touched base with Mike and touched base with the other Mike this week. So he's working through that, comparing the two.
Good, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Josh.
Did it go back to line 21 or? No, I'm kidding.
I don't know how I'm gonna follow that.
just don't tell us you lost $750,000.
Yeah.
I didn't. I did not. So I will say that brief summary of what we've been working on heavily for the last month is our attention to cybersecurity and our health. And we've done internal studies and we've also done external as well. And case in point, we have seen first, let me start with our security report. We've seen a significant increase in credible threats hit our firewall in a very brief period of time and from a very open actor. And we've mitigated that. It was
Single actor.
not one individual, but a state.
Mhm.
And they made it very prominent what they were doing. And we've since stopped that. Again, we are doing everything we can with the means that we have in order to mitigate that. Based on that, we've kind of taken some additional steps and made some changes to our current infrastructure. Case in point, we saw 3,000 hits within 6 days from this one particular actor. So there was very sizable attack. We've been the good news is though at our other locations we've definitely seen a decrease and a more acceptable level of attacks. So with that, we have taken some steps by replacing one of our solutions. Formerly, it was Sentinel-1. We've now replaced that with an alternative solution. Very, very credible. It was there was a fair amount of research into this, and they were very highly recommended at a very affordable price. Kim's next, she's right next to me, so she can throw stuff at me if I spend too much money.
And then we have also added an additional layer of security. So now we are about 3 layers of security. Unlike most people at home where they just put Norton on their laptops and say, oh, I'm protected. We can't take that approach. We have to layer it. So we have put several layers on. And with that, we are looking to onboard our third solution, Dark Trace, and we've been prototyping them or testing them for a little while now. And we've seen some very positive results, well, positive and some negative results, I guess you can say. So we have put this solution behind all of our other firewalls, and it's been catching stuff that have been slipping through. A lot of spam, that's what it is on our email side. But we've seen 285 malicious links that actually passed our current firewall. And that's no good. But they've been catching a lot. And the nice thing about this is that this particular solution acts as it catches it. So it doesn't rely on human intervention. It actually will stop it before it becomes a problem, and allows me to come in with my coffee in the morning and just review a report and determine what course of action, if any, needs to happen, because it's already taken an action or any countermeasure, sorry.
Are credit cards on a separate system, or is it on that same system that they would try to get into?
So yes, they are.
Are on the same
They
system?
are on our network. It is encrypted, and it's a direct connection to our provider. So technically they are sitting on our network. The nice thing about this solution is that it's this one, I'm trying not to go too deep at this conversation, but it does sit on our network level. So it's constantly scanning and looking at all traffic. So if something credit card related was not passing the sniff test, it would react.
Good, thank you.
Do you have any idea who it is, or?
I know exactly who it is. I can show you. But I don't think this is the perfect.
Okay.
I would respectfully,
We should go into that.
I would respectfully ask that.
That's fine,
include
that's fine.
questions.
I just didn't know if you could tell who it is. That's
I know
good.
who it is. I know where they're at. I know everything you can ask.
Is there something where you report things like that to another entity, or?
At this point, because they're non-actionable, because we've successfully stopped those attacks, there's nothing to report other than we've seen an influx. If we are breached, that is a whole nother level of reporting, and we'd report to agencies such as CISA, our insurance company. It really varies based on what our loss really looks like.
Do we have the right level of insurance?
That is a great question. I know that
Big
we did
question for
evaluate it in 2019. And I don't know what the current policy looks like.
It's reviewed by HMS, so it's up to date. It's reviewed every single year. It's a separate policy that we take out specific to cybersecurity.
Thank you for being.
Is there any way to go after them that we could do? Like
that-
bombing them?
One second, Mike,
Mike.
should we?
I mean,
Cut this
I mean, cyber.
Hey,
bombing.
Tom, I think we could probably do this in executive session. I don't
Okay.
think discussing security issues.
That's fine.
is-
That's fine.
Not trying to keep things from the public, we're trying to keep things from
Yeah, no, that's
those
fine.
people.
The nature of these reports are to bring awareness that we are catching, we are reporting, and that we are mitigating these
Okay,
situations. Awareness is a very big step.
all right.
And then lastly, we also deployed we replaced a current solution for our endpoints. So we are protecting our endpoints, our network level and our firewall level. So for our caliber, I feel as though we are putting forth significant good faith in protecting all of our assets. And there's a lot of really cool, fun things that I can talk to you about these solutions. But again, it would be in a more intimate setting. That being said, it's also the time of year for us to renew a lot of our, hang on, before I talk about that, any other questions related to cybersecurity? Okay. We're also looking at doing performing a lot of our annual renewals with, Microsoft, for example. And right now we're in conversations to try and make sure that we're only renewing the items that we're actually utilizing, because they are a fairly big ticket on my budget. We also utilized a lot, we leveraged the study that you guys are performing with the weight for the Wellfield. The tower, yes, they're out there marking everything, and we went ahead and took advantage of all the lines on the paint on the ground, and we were out GISing all of that while it's there. We're also upgrading a lot of our physical security. We just did some physical security upgrades at our electric office, and that's also to help with some of the components that we have at that location. And lastly, well, second to last is that we've also been collaborating with Millsboro, the town of Millsboro. So we also talked to Seaford and a bunch of other towns. We like to just keep a positive relationship with each other, just in case you need somebody.
Is that like
to
a
have
best
friend.
practice sharing kind of thing?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, it's also a great way to determine self-check, where we're at. Are we over, under performing in certain areas? And it's nice to be able to collaborate with our counterparts. And lastly is that a few months ago, we went ahead and I think it was November or December, we switched over to Zoom as our phone provider. And good thing we did, because our previous provider experienced quite a malware incident. So we certainly got out of that one in time. But that's all I have. Any other question or any questions?
Is there a password protocol that you use?
Yes, we do. I'm going to look over at Austin. Do you want me to answer this?
No, that's all in.
We do.
It's
The answer is yes.
pretty robust.
Yes. They don't like me very much. Anything else?
No, and we like you, Josh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job. No matter what they say.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else under the GM report then?
No.
Okay. All right, first item of new business or all business, excuse me, is the wastewater treatment plant. I don't think there's much to report after last Wednesday's meeting and what I mentioned in my report. So is there any discussion that anyone wants to have? So once again, just to the public, we would, any comments, concerns, ideas, we're more than willing to listen and hope to see everyone on the 17th of May at City Council chambers. Okay. Open forum, general discussion on new water tower. So.
Do you want me to take it?
Yeah.
As discussed at the last meeting, we were going to reevaluate the needed size of the water tank. And we met with GMB and two occasions and really good discussions, I think. I think we really got into the meat of it. Over the top, off the top, all the calculations and so forth that they produced were accurate and so forth. So the conversation really got to the point of looking at it from a different perspective of the original perspective, and jump in at any point if anything that you want to clarify or I say wrong. The original design was that they assumed that all the property within Lewes and other areas outside Lewes that we would reasonably serve were going to be served by the end of for this tank that the consumption or the production would be by the wells that are there, and the top peak day, I guess, in the summer, typically in the summer, of course, that we're looking at in the future. And they did not include any account of things that might happen in the future. So we're using 100% capacity on the worst day in the year. And that was the number that was used. And that's not unusual for designing facilities like this. The thing is with this project, what was obvious early was that other than just having one criteria, the capacity of consumption over a period of time, there is the production volume that's covering that production, that consumption has to be taken into account. And in this case, it was used, the production amount was used to be all the wells that we have running except the largest. That's a safety factor that's used in there. So we have a flat line of production versus a daily consumption. So let me pass something around. There's some really detailed drawings here I got to show you. So what we were originally designing was design the tank for the maximum capacity on the busiest day sometime in the future. So that
You're referencing number one?
yeah, well, no, look at I was going to get to this, but
That's okay.
look at number 6 first.
Yep.
Number 6 shows gallons versus time of day. And this is a direct reproduction of what Ben provided, but in my interpretation of it, at least. Basically, our main water usage is in the morning, in the summer, because the irrigation systems kick on. And then that goes well above, and that horizontal line is the production of those wells. So you can see the consumption going well above the production line, creating that hatched area is the capacity of the tank that is needed to cover that underproduction. So that's how the original million gallon was calculated. But if you look at that line, the production line, obviously, if that production we was originally kept as a given, the amount of production that can be produced by those wells with 1 ounce. But if you think about it, if you could increase that production, the capacity of that tank would drop very quickly. In other words, if the production goes up, there'll be less of that hump that's shown there covering that production. So we really had 2 variables. We had the size of the tank initially, and the flow of the production that could be produced to cover that. So the more production you develop, the smaller the tank can be. So, and then now you can look at the sketch 1. That's the original design, where we come to some point, build a tank. It goes all the way to the maximum that we're going to need for the life of the project. And then that area under there is the capacity of that. Well, if you look, let's jump down to the third item. You know, it's probably the probability of meeting that total demand at some time in the future is probably not 100%. So it's something less than that. It might be 25% less than that, might be 50% less than that. So for the longest time, we'll be building more than we need for the original operation of the tank. Because that capacity we're coming up with in total is much more than we'll need for decades down the line. So look at sketch 2. If we build a smaller tank and then maybe 3/4 of the tank of the capacity, and then if the production additional capacity is needed, rather than enlarging the tank or adding another tank, you increase production, put another well in, and you need a much smaller tank. And if it did come close to the maximum, you could continue to add a second tank to pick up that capacity. So we have two variables there. We have the tank capacity versus the production capacity. So by adjusting the production, you could considerably reduce the size of the tank. Things that weren't considered in here that probably should be is on the production side, we have a header that is, we know, very corroded and producing a lot less than the wells are actually pumping. I think, Austin, you said maybe as much as 20% of the capacity. So we really don't know what that flat line, what that production line is in this chart. It might be 20% beyond, less than might be 20% more than that line. That tank size would be smaller in that case. We know we have not been able to test that header to see what the pressure losses are on there to really identify how much flow we could produce by replacing that line. And that's one thing we want to do as soon as possible. We've talked about that, and that replacing that header with the pipe size that's needed. That pipe, I think, Vince, I think you were saying it was 16, I think it's 18 months now. 18 months from today. So it can't be resolved that quickly. So we won't know what the actual capacity of the pumps are until that's replaced. Now, I think that can be modeled between now and then to try to get a better handle on, but we won't have the actual figure for that until that new pipe is in place. The other thing, it doesn't take into account the maximum production includes all our users, and we have a couple users that are very large consumers. One in particular that consumes 30% of our production. Now, all signs are that user will continue for the next 20, 25 years, but there's no guarantee on that. And that could go out of business tomorrow, and then we would have a grossly oversized tank. There could be a catastrophe, a Sandy hitting us that knocks customers offline. We're doing a lot of work on mitigating sea level rise, and that could impact the occupation of low-lying areas, particularly the beach side and Canary Creek areas, that could reduce flows. That could have a major impact on future needs. So that makes those probabilities that wasn't taken into account when we originally designed it for the maximum capacity. So I think what we agreed upon among ourselves that we built a 750,000 gallon tank that would take us decades into the life of the tank, and know what size well we need going forward later on as the tank is being utilized.
You gotta talk to me like I'm 12 here. So you're saying put in a well, which allows you to feed the 3/4 size of that tank faster, so you get the pressure that you need.
Yeah, that well would raise that horizontal line to the production line to reduce the capacity of that tank. And if you design the tank 25% less than you need, and you do have 100% of capacity that comes into like, which is probably not a realistic assumption. Use the well later on to bring it up to where it should be. So you're increasing the capacity and
Are
reducing.
you
the
putting
tank
it
size.
into the tank, or are you just directly doing the well into?
It all goes into the tank one time or another. Again,
Okay.
It goes out of the wells and into the storage tank. And,
Okay.
it's not one or the other.
From the wells, it goes to the treatment facility. And then from there, it goes to either the tank or out into the distribution system.
You do have to cite that additional well.
Yeah.
And whether or not you put it on the existing well field area, or should that not be conducive, then you would have to move it. If you move it, then there is a potential that you would have a well that wouldn't be piped all the way back to the tower, depending on where it's at, and would be directly into the system. But you would have to have treatment at that point, at that location, if it's not close to the existing treatment building.
Right.
So
And the financial end of it is you have our present payers paying for that new tank for many years, for decades. If you step it, the future users, ratepayers, are paying their fair share later on in the game when it's needed. So we're really stepping the construction of the whole system.
Wouldn't the present ratepayers pay for the 3/4 tank?
Yeah.
Also,
I can get away
in the
from that.
future?
Yes, yeah.
And-
So-
and what would the difference be perhaps in price between the two tanks?
Well,
and
that's what we came to was, let's bid out the 750. And as an alternate, the million. Okay, now the prices that have been obtained up to date, there's about a $700,000 difference between the two. So if
We do have prices on the two different
yeah,
tanks?
just estimates.
So we should, the takeaway was, first of all, on the risk side, as you pointed out, going to a smaller tank, the $750,000, would save us $600,000 to $700,000. But there are risks associated with it. First of all, we probably could only cite one more well out there because of the separation. And then we don't even know whether the aquifer can actually produce with another well. So there's that risk there. And remember, we did authorize a well study, and
Is that risk with either option? It is.
Well, there's a well plan for the future anyway, at some point.
right,
So one way or the other, there's a well in the future to even serve the 750.
but there'd be a second additional well in the 750 option if the forecasts are correct.
Or you could build, when the time comes, you could build that one larger well. Or wells. I mean, why would you wait any later?
Right, okay, so there's, because the notes I took were, if we go with the smaller tank, we would need at build out, using the numbers GMB did, 2 additional wells. And they would be like 2 years out, and I didn't write the note down. 2030. And the 7th well would be 2034. The 6th well would be now.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Yeah. So there is the wells. And we're not sure whether, even if you put a 6th well, which we could do 400 feet from the other ones as required, whether the aquifer can actually generate that amount of water. The other thing I was thinking of after the fact, though, is that we're not even sure when the header pipe gets replaced, if all the existing 5 wells would actually produce at their individual flow rate, or whether there would be interaction between them on the aquifer level besides in the.
Yeah.
So there are unknowns there. And we decided that, we're going to suggest that we go out and get, as Press said, a bid for 750 and 1 million to find out what that delta is, to see whether if the tank vendors know that they have two options, they may want to incentivize the 1 million gallon tank and drop the price delta on it. So that would be part of the bid package. As Press said, we would do, using Delta P, some sort of calculation to be able to see what's being lost in the header, because tapping into it to get good measurements is probably not something we want to risk doing, given the condition of the piping system out there. And I pinged the state again yesterday about the well study and got a note back from Matt that said that, oh, thank you for reminding me.
You woke me up.
And it's not the first time we've reminded him. So we're trying to light a fire under the state. And if worse comes to worse, I think we'll go to Huxtable or someone else to get them to light a fire under DENREC to do the well study.
What is the study that they're gonna do?
So the wellhead study, we actually were asking about for multiple reasons. One of the ones is it's the wellhead protection area. And given our wells, Tidewaters wells, Republic Beach wells, how are they interacting? And does the wellhead protection area expand? Because that impacts development around it. And also to get an assessment for what is the aquifer depression? Because when you put wells in, what winds up happening is you suck down the aquifer locally, and then it has to migrate in. So, we're hoping that the Delaware Geological Society is the one that DENREC has do that.
Mhm.
So, unfortunately, there's a lot of things out there that we don't have definitive answers to, but we need to move forward on something now, taking those risks and the risks that Press laid out into account.
Yeah, I mean, that by manipulating the production, you can see that it has a major impact on that storage. And if we're off by 20% on the capacity that we have now, the wells that we've assumed are running, that would significantly reduce the size of that tank.
Look, I don't think there's any harm in getting both.
Yeah.
Both of those, done. Where are you guys? I see you keep raising your hand over there.
But I mean, the good news is that I will stamp, whether it's a 750,000 gallon tank or a 1 million gallon, I'll stamp the plan as taken on, with my PE stamp, but either way that can go. I would say that,
You got to unpack that for me. Are you saying you would support either option?
I can do either one. Yeah,
Okay.
because I mean, like Press is saying, it'll last until we need a second well in 2034. So that's fine. I'll do that. I mean, if it were 250 or 300,000 gallon tank option, I probably wouldn't stamp it. You definitely need more than that. So that's the good news. And also the good news is, I think in my mind, the way I see this is the tank manufacturers have said the difference between a 750,000 gallon tank and a 1 million gallon tank is $700,000 pre-bid. That's pre-bid. And I agree with everything everybody said, that it's possible we could get even a, tighter delta on that. But I feel like you need to weigh that 700,000 against all this production well stuff that we're talking about, because that's not free. If you put in a new well, it's going to cost at least 300,000 in today's dollars just to drill the well and get it produced. That doesn't include the piping to get it.
Sorry, how much you said? 300,000?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's just the well. If it is the catalyst for improved treatment at your existing water treatment plant, is even more. Once you get to that well in 2034, you're going to need treatment. And a well and treatment in today's dollars is about
Is
one
that
point
because
six.
of saltwater intrusion, or is that what you're suggesting?
No, because your water treatment plant now can't
Okay,
process
okay,
that.
got it.
Can't
got it.
handle
I
second.
I heard treatment, I was starting to think it's salt.
No,
so
no,
got
no,
it.
we're working on that too, but put that off to the side.
It's another
So,
problem. for
I
me.
feel like you're weighing the $700,000 difference in the size of the tank versus the cost of what it's gonna take to put in these other two wells. In 2025 and 2034. Maybe you don't need to put the one in 2034 in if the demand doesn't grow as we've projected it to. That's the risk that you're taking.
Is it safe to also say that in the calculations, and I think, Ben, you hit on this, are you assuming only the allocation of CPCN that's granted today and not anything that would be theoretically undesignated as of today? I.e. new road?
I mean, short answer is yes. I mean, we account for all the committed development. The one that's in there that's not
Is Mitchell.
is Mitchell Farm, because you gave them the option to be able to serve them. So we included that just as like kind of a stopgap measure. We've also included what we're calling organic growth, taking the natural growth rate of the city and projecting that out. That accounts for around 700 additional meters over that lifespan of, our planning study. So, whether that goes to undesignated CPCN or whether that comes from, you had a double lot in the city that now split, that adds 1 EDU that you weren't accounting for. Other things such as, you could start growing up instead of growing out, we don't know exactly where things are gonna go. So
Just for context, your water CPCN does not match your sewer service territory as designated today. So your expansion down the new road corridor, there's a pipe in there today, and that was all done as part of the Tower Hill project. And you pass all those properties as you head out. Those are all designated other than Lewes Waterfront Preserve and Tower Hill. So all those properties that you pass along, theoretically, you have the option to serve, but your infrastructure is sitting in the front of their yard. And I'm throwing that out there because Capes Cove is a good example. They're going through this process, and in the future, you'll start seeing stuff come through at the board meeting level that we're working on at a staff level and at a state agency level for a proposal to serve them both water and sewer, 13 lots. But everything out there is undesignated, which means you control that growth.
Warrington Farms also in your area, isn't it?
I don't, because it would be the Warrenton and technically the Plumber would be both those properties. I don't know if it was included in this, but they're there. In my numbers, I include them when we talk about expansion.
Warrington's right behind Mr. P's.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The Plumber's adjacent to that behind the Army Reserve. Yeah.
It's in your service area, right?
I don't know if that's encompassed in a CPCN, but I think it is, if I'm not mistaken.
You're serving.
Dale Acres,
You're serving Henlopen and Gardens, aren't you?
but they did carve outs. So like the end of, is it Hornkill? Those aren't necessarily included in some of that.
Yeah, the water service area acquisition is more difficult than the sewer service acquisition.
Mike can attest, Mike and his firm. can
You actually have to
attest.
get approval from each individual, almost each individual lot.
The water's, without seeing the map, the water's hard to predict because it is all over the place.
and just to note, we didn't account for those like specific parcels developing in our numbers.
No, we just have
There's some townhomes on there.
9% natural growth rate is the way we figured, yeah.
Charlie, when you made your initial calculations that led to the most conservative, my words, of 1 million gallons. Was, from what you're hearing now, do you doubt that was overkill, or was abundance of caution, or a toss up between 1 million and some lower number of gallons?
No, I wouldn't say that we have an abundance of, conservatism in there at all. No, not in our future demands. Like Ben mentioned, a lot of that future demand is actually developments that are on the books right now that we know about, that are either under construction, going through the planning process.
Right.
And then we have this 0.9% natural growth rate, which like Ben said, adds 700 EDUs. That seems reasonable to us as a good way to design a tank.
Obviously, you're looking at the commercial property potential as well, which can be even more onerous, right?
It can, but like Ben mentioned, we didn't look at every single parcel and assign an EDU count. We did that on the sewer side, but we didn't do it on the water side. We just put a 0.9% natural growth rate into it.
So just for context, as you go out New Road, the parcels on the right-hand side, before you get to the Canary Creek Bridge, they're not included. Hornkill's included, those two properties are included, but everything beyond is pretty much undesignated all the way out to Old Orchard.
Warrington's included, right?
Warrenton and Plumbers included.
So, I mean,
I have no argument and with the calculations and how they came to it. And if it wasn't for the fact that there's a second adjustment we can make because of the well production, we can adjust that production to what actually occurs. I think that's the thing, and the fact that you're not paying for everything up front and then having the present customers, ratepayers hit with that bigger number, you can adjust it somewhere down, a decade down or more down to, because you have that flexibility. I think the fact that the chances of it, this being 100% correct and needing that capacity is remote in my mind. And there's some things out there we don't already know, like the header pipe, of course, which concerns me. And then things that may happen in the future, like we lose that one white elephant on our head. This allows us to do it gradually because we do have that capacity to increase the production sometime in the future.
What does Dewey have? And I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think we should get a quote on both. What does Dewey have up in the air?
I think it's 500,000 gallons, but it looks way bigger than that. That thing looks huge, but I think it's 500,000 gallons. It was
And how big is our tank?
300 right now.
300.
but just have to remember, as we discussed before, we know that we're actually undersized now.
Yeah.
So what's the number at a minimum we need was like 500,000 or 600,000 gallons.
600.
Yeah. So
600,000 gallons for now or 600,000 gallons for later?
Present time.
now,
Yeah.
Okay.
so the reason why we're coming back is because we did authorize going out for bid last time on the 1,000,000-gallon tank.
Right.
And I think what we're looking for now is an agreement that we would go out for bid for a 750 and 1,000,000. And at that point, we could come back, we'll come back to the board and with the true price delta. And at the same time, GMB will do some calculations on the header pipe issue from just a Delta P perspective to see what type of gauge we can get on that. And because we need to do something now, we can't wait for a year or two.
That's fair enough. I mean,
Going to the two track. Does that slow down your process or affect negatively, I don't know, more time
no.
of what you're
We
doing
thought it
now?
might on the geotechnical side because the tank manufacturers are pretty precise in what they require for their soil borings and the geotechnical analysis. But we talked to the tank manufacturer and we'll be okay. It shouldn't slow us down.
So they're not going to charge us more for two bids?
No, definitely not that, no.
There's no harm, no foul.
And we had kind of gotten we had gotten the ball rolling on the geotechnical after we were, given the marching orders to move with the million a couple months ago. But we're good to go on that. It shouldn't hold us up.
So because this isn't an action item on the agenda, what we would look for is that there would be no strenuous objections to us adding in a bid alternate for 750. And that will be done through a staff level with engineers.
I think we'll do it like you suggested. We'll
Yeah.
bid it at 750 and ask for $1 million on the alternate because it would be incentive for them to get that delta down between 750 and $1 million. That's what we're thinking right now. And we can proceed with that. The last thing I wanted to do was proceed something like that and then have to come back here 3 months ago and kind of have the whole discussion again, you know. But maybe we'll have some more data. I think it just comes down to your risk aversion to, you know, do you think the demand's gonna go up the way that GMB projected, or is it gonna be something less, and whether you're gonna need a second well or not? Because once you go into that second well in 2034, I think the present worth would be in favor of going with the 1 million gallon tank.
Well, I think our tank got put in 51 or 52. 52, so you're looking at 71 years. They did a good job. I'm not saying we're under our own capacity.
Well,
We
you
are.
guys did a good job. You've maintained it. As long as you maintain the tank, it'll last.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moving on. Item 9, pole attachment agreement. So Robin,
All right, what you have here is a draft pole attachment agreement that staff, Mike, Pete, and Shentel, who's asking for the agreement, has worked out. Shentel, they provide internet, cable TV, and telephone services, just like a Comcast or Verizon does, or Xfinity, whatever you want to call them now. They're based out of Virginia. As the mayor had said previously in the executive session, they do have a franchise agreement already set in place with the city. And that happened in last year, 2022. When we first presented the draft agreement that was similar to the one with AT&T, they came back with a lot of edits that they would like to see. And again, that's when Mike and Pete really got involved, and Pete's done the majority of the work. I've supplied some information. Overall, what it is what we have is the one we have now is pretty well consistent with what we have with AT&T. There's some few minor wording changes. As far as fees and things like that, it's more consistent with what we have with the FiberTech agreement that was done in 2015. Because the difference in the AT&T one is AT&T are using wireless facilities on individual poles. FiberTech, Comcast, and Shentel will be using cables. So it's kind of a different thing. So some of the fees are a little different how it's designed in the rates. But overall, it's basically the same agreement. And I'll let probably Mike or Pete to kind of, if there's a lot of details on some of the wording that they needed to address.
No, certainly. Thank you, Robin. Pete actually had to run, so I'm going to take the ball here. I will emphasize, though, as Robin said, Pete did do the heavy lifting here. I get the credit to be in front of you here today at this moment. But Pete and Robin really did the yeoman's work, and kudos on that. If you recall, when the board previously adopted and approved the DMEC form pole attachment agreement, the idea of having a form agreement is to have uniformity and consistency when these agreements, when different providers request to enter into an agreement. So it was important, based on the direction that the board gave to us previously, that these agreements, for it to be consistent, they need to be consistent. So we were very clear that we would be willing to engage in a dialogue if there's anything in there that needs to be changed, but we want to keep the revisions at a minimum. And that is, in fact, what's in front of you here today. So this has been vetted by staff, vetted by, my firm from a legal perspective. Shentel is in agreement with the version that is in front of you here tonight. And we're happy to answer any questions. If there aren't any questions, we're looking for an approval of the agreement as presented.
Are they is it like pole attachments for like big towers, not towers, but for Wi-Fi and things like that?
So these are the attachments, as Robin mentioned, predominantly the cables onto the BPW's poles.
Okay.
And so there are two different, remember, there's two different, I guess the review was bifurcated. Anything that's dealing predominantly with aesthetics and look and feel is on the city's end.
That's, yeah.
And then ours is purely, it's the BPW poles. You're using the poles, inspections, making sure if there are any infrastructure that's abandoned, that the BPW requested to be removed, enforcement fees, adding a lot more clarity than exists under the legacy agreements.
So, I mean, I think my only comment on it is the last item that Mike mentioned there is we're seeing more and more abandoned wires on these. And so there is a section on maintenance, but I think we need to call it out more directly to so we have some oomph with the various vendors for abandoned wires. That's my only comment on it.
So to get things on the table, I'll make a motion that we accept the agreement with Shentel as presented to us.
Second.
I would just ask if anyone wants to make a friendly amendment to it to instruct staff and Mike to go forward on the minor editing that we needed to clear up and clearly define.
Yeah, yes, the minor editing included.
And so just so I understand the direction, this was based off of a conversation from Tom before, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the request would be to insert language, I believe it's to section 7.4, that clarifies that also includes drop wires.
Correct.
So that would be the amendment. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Yeah, and just for, for clarity for the public, what I was concerned about is that, it talks about pole attachment, but many of these line drops are off mid-span of the cables going to houses and businesses. And so they're not directly on the pole. However, understanding that what we're doing is we're authorizing them to put the wires in between the poles, but I just want to be black and white that if you abandon, if a line gets disconnected, you have to come and remove it.
Yes, good.
And so just to clarify for the record, so Tom had made a motion, Richard seconded it. Tom asked for a friendly amendment as stated. Owen said, accepted the friendly amendment. It didn't change Richard's second. So yeah, got it. Just clarifying.
You got that down. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So 5-0 and 4. Okay. Item 10, open forum general discussion on Board of Electors.
So in simple context, because we have an election this year, we had to elect a Board of Electors. And so what we're bringing to you today is a resolution per our charter to elect Board of Electors, the inspector being Bill Landon, the judges being Elaine Peace and Sue Townsend. And so we're looking for today, and Mike will probably suggest that this be read by title only, but it's completely up to you if you want the entire resolution read and approved. I believe this is 3. That's it.
it is a resolution, so it's a two-step process. The first, you want it in title only, and then the second is to consider.
You have a motion?
Motion for title only.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. President, members of the board, resolution number 23-003, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes regarding
Easy for you to say.
appointment of a Board of Elections for the 2023 annual election. Mr. President, resolution 23-003 has been read by title only and placed before the board for its consideration and adoption.
A motion to,
Motion to accept, resolution 23-003.
Great.
Three. I'll put that in there.
Second.
any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Item 11, strategic plan. So I apologize because I was late getting this to Sharon. But I think everyone did get a copy. What I did was I took the original strategic plan that we did in 2021, that we updated in 2022, and gave the status today. So just gonna go through from a high level, and then there's any questions or input from Richard and press on their specific topics. So consider rate increases on revenue streams. As we've already discussed, we've authorized Austin to go out and get the rate study done. It will include impact fees. So that's in progress. And it's for all four of the utilities: water, sewer, electric, and stormwater. Thank you. The stuff that runs down the street. Review BPW city conflict. So Austin and I meet monthly with Andrew and Anne Marie. And then there's also just a general increase in the interactions between the two staffs. So I think things are going well there. There are things we do need to improve, that we've discussed, to make sure we're coordinated, like on road projects, so that we get a chance to look at the infrastructure underneath them, and we can collectively save money by ripping up roads once. And so there are areas, but that's all being discussed, and the improvements are being discussed also. We did form a finance committee. And Richard, I don't know if you want to add.
We are continuing to take a holistic review of each of the utilities so that we can treat them as individual business units that stand on their own, and use that model to then evaluate the relative financial policies that have been referenced for further review. We've done the electric utility so far, and the water utility is underway right now. And we will continue meeting and refining the water, and then switch to either stormwater or the sewer, whichever comes first.
And there's mitigation also, but we're going to discuss that in item 12.
Okay,
So unless you want to do it now.
no, we can go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Increased technology at the plant and monitoring. This was specifically about the wastewater treatment plant. And we do regular walk downs at the facility. We do them with GMB. And we've been a little behind on that. And hopefully, do you got something? Oh, great.
Update from our discussion yesterday. We did hire the level 5 operator from Fruitland, and I'm going to introduce him to Austin and go over the scope of the work, and hopefully that'll work out.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we haven't done one in this year because the person from GMB that was doing it left the firm. So now that they've hired someone, we can get back to, and that's a much deeper dive than like when Austin and I or Press goes over there, because he looks at the procedures, the laboratory, those things that, as well as the physical plant itself. How to continue to improve our image. I think, Sharon has done a fantastic job on, the redoing of the homepage, the posting of the documents, creating special categories for them so that they're more easily accessible by the public. One of the things, as Andrew just mentioned, we will next year join the city in their efforts or their meet and greet. And but I did go to the one last night and talked with people. The No Wipes in the Pipes campaign, in combination with other discussions that are further in the document, I think we've seen a noticeable improvement in both the reduction in pump clogging and the reduction in ragging at the plant. So part of that is, the meeting we had with BB Health Hospital, and they were very receptive, and that in combination with the No Wipes in the Pipes campaign in the public. So, fingers crossed, hopefully that continues. Should we consider moving our office from the current location? So this predated anything, and as everyone knows, the city was awarded the Army Reserve Center, and we are jointly looking at space requirements, design, and how to go out for bids on a new combined City Hall BPW office. So that is not going to happen in the short term. And we do have short-term facilities issues in that we have 0 open offices and the city has 1, other than Santa's house. And for some reason, no one's willing to move over to Santa's house. So we are going to have to, and we are actively talking with the city about what to do in the interim, because we're probably 5 years away from a new building. Consider best practices from the surrounding area. So we did visit Seaford last year, and we're, Austin has asked that, we, the board, be more active in organizations like SCAT and the local government meetings and other ones like that to get more prominence there. So, I mean, I've actively been trying to do that, but
I give you more visibility on grants and such.
Yeah.
Good
I
idea.
think that's something we all need to get more involved in. AMI, not going to go into a lot of detail here. We did approve DMAC AMP for implementation of AMI. Now we're waiting to hear back. Austin, has there been updates on?
Still waiting. You got till June or July to hear anything back.
No, and just so everyone remembers, the whole reason for going to AMI is it helps with peak shaving, which will save all of our customers money because our congestion charges are based on that. And it eventually the industry is going to move to time of day usage. And when we start getting charged time of day, we need the ability to mirror that in our rate structure. So AMI is kind of like the foundation, and it's pretty well accepted. I've seen numbers from the industry in general that show approximately 60 to 70% of the country has gone to AMI or is implementing it now. So battery storage. This is on hold from our perspective. I think as everyone knows, we did get the bids in and we did evaluate them. We were trying to combine two different rate or different case scenarios. One was as a backup for the losing of a line, the line coming into town, and then also for congestion charges. And those two batteries are kind of directly opposed to each other. And so that's not the way we would go going forward. So Austin, you want to talk a little about what DMAC is doing on batteries?
I think it's still preliminary. I wouldn't go into it too much in depth.
Okay. So we're still investigating which option is best. And I think as everyone knows, DRBA is going to electric boats. However, their first vessel is going to be a pure hybrid. And the future boats will then have, and the boats are all being built with battery compartments for future upgrade. But until they get to their second boat, you know, they're still investigating, but we're in active discussions with DRBA on their needs. Solar. We really haven't moved forward on this. We had talked about putting solar at the well field. And I know, Austin, you want to add anything?
Yeah, we got a price several years ago to do it, but again, that all plays into what you're gonna do. If you're putting another well out there, obviously that's not gonna work. Depending on where your piping goes, that's not gonna work. So there's a lot of things that need to be kind of hashed out before you can entertain putting solar on that site. Plus, it also hinders you from doing anything else on that site.
One other thing, electric, I might have you all consider putting on there. I mentioned to you the Chris Basin and Mike Dunmeyer from US Wind, and you have been in, you know, I know you know those gentlemen, but I know the city, we've been in, you know, they reach out to us quite often, so it might be good to further include you in those conversations, because that's more your wheelhouse.
Austin and I are meeting with Chris Basin on May 5th, next Friday, specifically about, well, and just in general, but specifically about what they're doing.
For landfall ideas.
Chris has been a little bit difficult. He's over in Copenhagen right now at Ørsted headquarters, and he's taking the rest of this week and touring around. Terrible job.
And one update from our side on that, we've been working with the University of Delaware, has that offshore wind training program that they're doing with Deltech, and Rob Nichols let us know they're actively recruiting for offshore wind basic safety trainers. The individuals will be paid to complete an 8-week-long training course in Georgetown, which will be conducted by Maersk Training Group. Once individuals complete, individuals with GWO certificate instructors, they'll be eligible to teach basic safety training modules. So they're moving ahead with that.
Good. Water and sewer technology, you know, the issue of infiltration and inflow. I think as we've discussed at many meetings, we're regularly going out there now, like at Cedar Street, and hammering the lines, looking at the condition, lining or replacing as appropriate. So that's ongoing. We are, you know, looking at upgrading the pump stations. That would include flow meters and a robust SCADA system. So I think that's well underway, and Austin had spoken to that a little bit earlier. So engagement. So as I said before, we're doing routine walk downs with Inframark of the wastewater treatment plant. Our education program I talked about with BB and the public. Meet with large customers. So we did restart this. We went to meet with BB, but we need to develop a schedule for going to the other areas like Cape School District, DRBA, healthcare facilities. That's something I think, Austin, you're going to put together a schedule for the coming year. And, we'll divvy that workload up. But, now that we're hopefully post-COVID, we can start, some of those initiatives and also, going out to the HOAs. And so RKL, new state RPS requirements. So the state, and Austin spoke to this at one of the prior meetings about the new solar implementation programs and the new requirements. I try to get on to Senator Hansen's calls on Friday to keep abreast of what's going on there. And I know DMAC is actively, DMAC is a stakeholder in it, so. But I think we're going to see, changes in the renewable energy policies going forward. Climate change and sea level rise. We seated the mitigation committee with Press as the chairman. We've reached a consensus on critical infrastructure, but Press is going to go into this more in the next item. We talked about cleaning up telecommunication lines just before. So that's moving. We had another item about financial oversight. I don't know if there's anything more you want to add on this, Richard, or
Not really, no.
No, I mean, we hired Kim, and I think that's the biggest thing we did, so.
Yeah.
Now, if you just stop losing money.
Yeah.
That was a joke, by the way. Strengthen oversight of the operator's performance at the wastewater treatment plant. We've discussed that before. Board of Directors oversight of the functions of the BPW. The biggest thing here is, GHD we hired last year as the lead for evaluating the future wastewater treatment plant needs. And we've been holding regular workshops on that with the public. So last December was the first time we held a holiday get together for our collective staffs, the cities and the BPWs post-COVID. And I think that was very well attended. Hopefully we'll do the picnic this summer and, try to get back onto a little more normal basis on that. And I already talked about the relationship between the board and the mayor and city council. I think we are light years ahead of where we were, and it's always can be improved, but I think we're moving forward. So, anyone have anything, questions?
Just the thought that, this was done, I don't know, what year was that done? Do you remember?
2021, no, 2020.
It's done 2018, 2019 by Spot Stevens and McCoy. You'd updated it, I think today, this is the last year, so it would have been 2018. You did it.
Yeah.
2018 was.
Yes, that's right. This is 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're about due to have another session like that. It's very involved. It was a good process. I think it's about time we relook at that, and a lot of things have changed in the 5 years.
I agree. And a lot of this stuff is old and really
Yes.
is,
Yeah.
behind us. We need to stop discussing the dispute with the city and bury it and just move forward. So I fully, so I think that,
Have you thinking about Austin in the fall?
Yeah, we got a lot going on.
Well, yeah, we do.
I'd probably do that as fall into winter, and that was a pretty lengthy process because we had workshops and stakeholders from the public and just about everybody.
Has everybody seen the document that was produced back then? It's you have copies, don't you?
Yeah,
You had to see a copy. It was really well done.
yeah, they presented a total book of what they found, what the recommendations were. And that's where this came out of. So, but you're right.
Carl, have you seen it?
I have no.
No, because I don't think Richard was on the board at that point. So,
Okay.
yeah, so if Austin, you'll send that around to the two of them and after the election, to whoever else is on the board. Okay. Moving ahead. Item 12, mitigation.
Okay, well, there's not much different that has occurred since the last time I mentioned this, and Robin, do you have a copy of the maps and things here? There's not much from the committee standpoint, but there's been a lot of work by Robin and Josh. I mean, and there's still work to be done, but I think we've taken the committee as far as we can go. Now it's up to the boards, the staff to implement, and they're very well into it. Oh, I'm sorry. So all the key assets of the DPW have been identified, the location specifically identified, the elevation of the critical pieces of any of the assets, such as the control panel for the pumping stations. It identifies the flood zone, the FEMA 2015 flood zone on there where they're located. So you have the elevations, you have the locations, you have the what is contained there. And then the thing that's been added is the proposed compliance timeline. And these are based on the elevations of the individual assets. So that's the fifth column over that identifies the years those items are programmed to be upgraded. Of course, they would be upgraded if we made the upgrades to the equipment are needed. Or if new equipment is built, they would be built to these standards. Now that this grant offer is available, I guess it's grant and loan,
no, it's grand.
so all grant. So it looks like that's accelerated the implementation of these things. So if we can get this money, we can start evaluating all these things in the field more in more depth and start planning what we're gonna do at each station, because obviously this doesn't tell you what's planned for. It's just that it has to be planned, it has to be implemented and raised up. So that's where we're at. I've told the committee that there's no need for us to continue to meet at this time. Now that this grant is coming available, I told them as that progressed, we would have meetings just to bring them up to speed on what's happening. The next big step after this, though, is we're going to wait for the city to get their plans together for what's going to affect the floor drains, the toilets, things like that impact our system flooding. So once they're in line, we'll probably reestablish meetings with the mitigation committee to tie our recommendations into what they've come up with.
You want to, Robert, do you know, maybe Robin, are the building code, or is that being updated to inform cities that floodplain, these outdoor spigots and such we should start to update there? Is that up to us to kind of recognize where we need to elevate that?
I mean, it can be incorporated with the mitigate. Well, I don't know how much the mitigation planning team that you have now that meets quarterly.
Yeah, but they're not informing that through the international building code or anything like that to say by 2030, you should start to plan for X.
No, that's
Or
more
do you
from
know?
the FEMA side of
Okay.
stuff. I think FEMA's makes the recommendations on things like that, but they ultimately leave it up to the municipalities.
So we need to kind of figure that out on. our
Yeah,
own.
that's
There's no
the thing.
committees.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
thing. FEMA kind of comes up with the minimum standards, just like all that with the base flood elevations and stuff, says this is what we recommend you adhere to, but we're not gonna say no if you want to make any additional changes. Yeah,
So
you just have to meet that minimum standard.
the quarterly meeting you're talking about is the mitigation team. However, I understand that planning commission has
Environmental.
an environmental committee which
Yeah, and I was
covers.
actually, it's ironic you brought that up because I was actually going to suggest tomorrow, and I'll bring it up here, that maybe Amy consider bringing someone from BPW onto that committee. Because street trees came up and all, these other things that are probably going to come up in discussion. So it might be worthwhile to have someone from staff or from the board be on her committee.
And I can't remember, I met her last
Amy
time.
Marasco.
And
And she's going to present that tomorrow at the workshop, just to give us an update of where she's at and her direction. So.
so she,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. And I was gonna try to get her contact information because when I talked to her last night, this is where they're going to address the city's portion of sea level rise, climate change, amongst other things.
So with Candace going off, I assume she's going off since you appointed. Would she be the one to come back on? When,
So Amy Marasco is from the LPC. She's from the
Oh.
planning commission.
well, who would you, we won't be meeting anytime soon.
Oh, you're saying to your committee?
To my committee. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I need to do that on the
replace-
22nd. I mean, we need
Well, we won't
to
be meeting,
reshuffling of a committee point, for ex officios and things like
Yeah.
that. So it may be Joe Elder, maybe I'll do it.
okay,
Someone, I don't know.
whoever, I mean, like, again, there's no urgency.
Yeah, we'll fill it.
We won't be meeting for a while.
But I think talking with Amy, because the coordination and she understands that our issues are BPW critical assets. And we don't have jurisdiction over how high hose bibs go and things like that. So
Who
Getting-
has say about like meters in the house? Is that a building code issue or ours? Well, whatever it is, we got to address that at some point.
I think it's more on our side.
Okay.
The concern is the same thing as I briefly spoke to Brett about this some time ago. And it's the concern is being able to work on the meters, being able to, you don't want the guy standing on a ladder pulling meters and working on the meters. So that's kind of the downfall of where do you put that? FEMA wants all that stuff out of the size and get it. But that's the concern.
So Anne Marie has entered the room.
She must have heard something.
I'm listening in my office. So, I mean, I think the issue of hose bibs and things that are covered under the plumbing code are under the BPW jurisdiction. It's the other building things that aren't. The
How about like meters, the electric meters, they would be
electric
ours.
meter,
They would be ours.
that you guys fix the meters,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So,
But Anne Marie Freely, the issue with the hose bibs that we've discussed before is that, the requirement and we have the cross connect and that we're looking into. We could specify that it has to have vacuum breakers. But the requirement that they have to be elevated or in some way so that the vacuum breaker isn't underwater.
that would still be something that you would have to amend the plumbing code to include. It wouldn't be something, because our building inspectors don't look at plumbing at all, really.
Yeah, that's probably correct. Yeah.
Did we ever get any response
That's the part we
that
sort
they
out,
can
so-
be
Right.
double checked valves rather than circuit,
That's
vacuum break?
that's what our meeting is
Vacuum breakers.
about coming up on the 9th.
Good, good, okay. Do you or Josh have any comments about what you're doing? You still a lot of work going on. If you want to talk about it, that'd be. I guess one thing I didn't specifically mention that at some point when he gets this all put together, it'll be tied into the GIS system.
Yeah.
That's where Josh comes in.
So just kind of build on what you guys are working on.
Right.
We are collecting the GIS data. We are incorporating it into our Esri platform. And that Esri platform also we are looking to integrate into our billing system for the asset management for the financial piece and forecasting. So all of this data is being utilized and it is being collected and it is being used as a tool to help Kim and the financial committee to determine what we need to do moving forward, in addition to the elevation for sea level rise, and to advise on that side.
Thank you. We're going to try to put a red flag next to some of these things that are coming up. If we don't, if it's not installed by the date on here, that somehow the computer kicks out that it's coming up to just warn the administration so it's not lost somewhere down the line. But if we're going to start working on them soon, that might not be necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the first part of this is we envision is gonna be more of a condition analysis of the pump stations that haven't been assessed. And then through that, we would come up with a scope of work for what would be implemented as part of the phase 2 of the grant, which would be for the physical construction side.
So that's where we are. We'll be holding off meetings, but be very busy internally in the staff.
What are the mechanics or like the recommendations that come out of your committee actually getting into a place where they're being implemented?
The mechanics, when you,
Yeah, like, I guess if the board approves them, then, so what I'm concerned about is we're gonna have a lot of developments. Final plans being submitted in the next 8-9 months or so. And we want to be able to tell them,
yeah,
hey, raise the pump station to whatever it is that's the board standard.
And that mechanism comes through our standard spec, which we update periodically.
True, but yeah, and we can update that quick enough. It's just like, how does it work? Like you're gonna make recommendations to the board and then the board's gonna implement them.
yeah, the recommendations are on here when they should be done. Or if they're new, then they would automatically have to abide by that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so everybody's got some sense of pieces, we are requiring, 18 inches of freeboard and 15 inches right now sea level rise for elevations of critical infrastructure. But I think what you're talking about is even, more stringent than that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is.
So I think I just want to thank everyone that's been on the mitigation team, Barbara,
Barbara, yeah.
Bob Heffernan, Sumner, Crosby, Mark, Proudy. Is that everyone?
I think so.
I mean, they have done a tremendous effort. They've done a lot of walk downs and, you know, we thank them for that and we will probably reconvene at some point.
And
So-
Candace, but.
Oh, Candace
that's
is
her,
ex
yeah.
officio, yeah. All right. Open forum general discussion on the projects list. So, Austin, you're up.
You want each individual one, or do you want me?
No,
Oh,
so I guess, let me just, from a high level perspective, you know, we've asked Austin to
Just
keep a
confirm
list
everyone has
of,
the list.
Is it online? Is the list online?
Hey, you have it, Tom.
to create a list, but
Under 13, yeah.
You want me to frame this for when your last day with the board is?
No, I
You sure? I'll print one out for you just in case.
Yeah, I have a copy right here.
I'll print you another one.
Okay, that's good.
so this is a Word document, but you know, we've asked is for Austin to look at either project, putting it into some type of software program so that we can track actions, due dates, who's got the next action and trending rather than being a Word document. But, you know, he's captured what he's been working on now. So we can get an appreciation for how little he actually does.
Yeah, right.
That also was a joke.
What amazes me, Austin, is you can keep it all in your head too. If we ask him a question, he usually knows the answer and very specifically. So
I got
I don't know how you do it, but
staff that supports it.
I know you do. You got a great staff.
Huh?
You have enough
I think it depends on the day, to be honest. Yeah, Mike knows it. Pete's been working kind of hard lately with all these agreements.
So is there any high level ones you want to talk about or?
So I think from a development perspective, you can kind of see, you know, Politown Road, we're working towards closeout. Actually, I believe the final paperwork has been submitted. The bonds have been submitted. So hopefully we work towards closeout of that project. Obviously, we have a lot of planning grants out, which we talk about heavily. You saw it through the water tower, the water main assessment, the canal crossing, and then obviously the developments, both, you know, what's going on now, what's coming in the future. You know, Tower Hill's kind of a lag development. Lewes Waterfront Preserve is completely dependent on transformers. You know, we have the coordination piece with DelDOT when it comes to the Canary Creek Bridge and the permanent relocation, which hopefully that, you know, worked out to be this fall. Petaluma Bluff preliminary discussion, that's probably going to be coming down the pike. Roosevelt Landing, obviously they haven't gone through final approval yet. Gibbs property just went through preliminary, I believe. Cunningham, we had discussions with them. That's, you know, the property just north or beside Gibbs property. A lot of what we're trying to do is from a utility perspective, have the initial discussions with these developers so that they can fully understand what's going to be expected, the coordination between projects, I think is key so that you don't have this disruption twice. I mean, we talk about a manhole being added now instead of in the future and tearing up exactly what you would have to deal with today instead of in the future. We have the Capes Cove, that will be one that you'll see in the future. It looks like that is going to have a pretty large subsidy, if not entirely subsidized. It seems like it's going to be entirely subsidized, but we're working through the mechanisms and the agreements with the state to codify that. And we also have to seek the CPCN as well.
Also, is that 10 to 12 units there? Is that full capacity or there are vacant lots
It's
there?
current capacity. Our understanding is that the back corner that's currently used for their drain field, whether that can be developed, no idea.
Austin, has that CPCN gone to the city yet?
It has going for the waiver and,
Right.
and the city granted the waiver
Okay.
for
That was
annexation.
my question.
Annexation.
Thank you.
Yep. The well field, obviously, we continue to monitor with all being relatively the same age. Well 1 and well 3 are currently, well 1 just completed a reline and a new pump. Well 3 got relined, waiting for the new pump. Well 1's in service. Our anticipation is May we'll see well 3 be in service. Then we'll continue to watch for sand infiltration. Water tower, obviously, we're working through that. Canal crossing, same. Grants and funding. Look, we're using the UD whenever we can to help us. Stat on our level. Obviously, we have a lot going on, and so any help that we can get or receive, we take advantage of. And Chase and his team at UD have been fantastic. AMI, again, waiting for the possibility of subsidy through the DOE. Hopefully between the midsummer to early fall, we'll have some sort of determination on what's out there and what we can expect. We're working through the cost of service study. We have a meeting this Friday with UFS, Dawn and Chris and their staff. Strategic planning we talked about today, and we'll look towards trying to get some proposals together for the previous contractor, which was Spot Stevens and McCoy, and possibly maybe 2 or 3 other ones so that you guys can have a feeling for who else is out there. Customer surveys, we did that on an annual basis. Sharon and Chris handled that. Insurance, we continue to just keep our eyes and ears open. Obviously, we went after the pollution insurance, but we're also looking at, other metrics, other ways. We looked at parametric insurance after Kim and I went to the APPA conference, but it's a pricey insurance, and with all what's going on in today's world, you kind of have to weigh the cost of insuring yourself versus the cost of taking the risk. Financials, obviously, Kim works every day to tighten it up and to basically separate out each utility so it's its own business unit. ARPA funds, we went back to the city and asked for the clarification to expand to water and sewer, not particular to one project but to use the $900,000 that was approved last year, but not to a particular project, more open for water and sewer. So we could be agile as projects come down the pike.
On that one, do we have any time frame when we're going to see the money?
But you have some kind of MOU, I think, or some kind of a memorandum of understanding you got to sign.
I think
It's been
yeah.
crafted.
I think Anne-Marie and Glenn are working on the comments that we passed on from Pete and staff.
I mean, we approved for you to spend it.
Yeah.
Right,
At this
but
point, it's administrative.
The MOU update is what, we've been passing back and forth. And I think until that's out and signed,
My understanding is you'd worked out some form of agreement that was palatable for both sides, is my
Yeah.
understanding.
I think Anne-Marie and Glenn were working through, there were a couple comments that we had on our latest iteration, plus there had to been the modification to take that piece out that was specifically for the wastewater treatment plant and pump stations to now just say water and sewer. So we're working through it.
Money there. As far as I know, we showed up. We showed on our ledger, so, yeah.
Good luck.
we're just looking to be able to spend.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking for you to take it. I don't like showing on the ledger. It's not ours.
I just want to make sure I got everything, cost of service, insurance, financials, ARPA. Inventory, we continue with the supply chain to be mindful of what our inventory is, what lead times are, so that we don't get caught in a pickle. And we've battled that. Water meters are a new one, water pits are a new one, water meter pits are a new one. Ductile iron pipes one, transformers are still out there on lead times. Anxious to see how the wastewater treatment plant and how that gets bid out, what that lead time is. Same thing with the water tower. Vehicles. One of the things that Kim and I are working on is one, making sure that our depreciation is set properly, but also looking at our large purchase price vehicles, our bucket trucks, line trucks, vac trucks, the ones that are very expensive, the ones that got even more expensive since, purchasing them in the past, actually looking at some sort of financing option related to what they deem as a lease. And what it is you make 5 annual payments, and you can do it monthly, you can do it biannual, you can do it yearly with a buyout option of $1 at the end. And that just frees up a little bit more cash for the 5 years, or 6 years or 7 years, whatever you would like. So we're working with a couple different vendors, including the manufacturer, to see what those metrics look like. And then we'll probably bring that back to the board They would like to have it about 30 days prior to taking delivery, and we're not expected to take delivery on the most recent one until November, which is about 2 years after the original order date. Obviously, the well report and study, as Tom mentioned, we're working with the DENREC. Impact fees, again, we're working with UFS to work through that study. Batteries, similarly, I already touched on today. Tree trimming, we have one circuit left to be trimmed, which will probably be in the November, December timeframe. That will be almost entirely encompassed on the beach side with a little bit at the end of Schley and Gills Neck Road. Cross connection control plan, obviously Robin's working through that. We've talked that a couple times. We're working with 120 water on lead and copper. Continuing education, talked about pole attachment agreements, facility masters plan, we talked about staffing. Obviously, we want to be forward thinking as employees are nearing retirement. And so we're keeping our eyes and ears open for potential new hires that could come in and fill the role that George would be leaving with. Policies, we continue to work off of existing policies, which we touched on last year. But one of the things that, as hopefully things die down and we move forward, there's policies that we would like to introduce. And I think Earl was leading that charge, and Earl has a list that he's been working off of, but staff has also started to compile a list, and I believe Mike has a list as well. Things that we want to look to in the future. City Hall rent, one of the things we'll have to look at as part of the MOU. There was a piece in there that talked about updating the rent to current terms, because I believe the last rent existed in 2018. And since then, it's just operated at a 3% increase. And so part of the MOU, there was a section there that said it was going to be analyzed.
To increase, right?
No.
The NIPD's permit, I talked about that. Nutrient offset, same thing. That's when we moved chicken manure out of this watershed to another watershed. So Robin did a good job. He updated it. I'm most likely going to have to review it again as we near the submission for the NIPD's permit, because they'll probably want to take a look at that. Based off of our loading, it's probably going to be the end of this year, beginning of next year, that we'll probably have to move it again. So we'll have to get in contact with a local chicken farmer and we'll go through that process.
Oysters.
There was discussion.
You're gonna feed chicken manure to the oysters?
Yeah.
Not the offset.
Built it.
No, we've been talking to the state about it.
Yeah. Well, allocation permit, we got that last year. It was increased to 3.6 million gallons a day. Obviously, we're working on the long range plan, and pump station 3 is being worked on. That's high level. There's probably more that I'm missing, but as of right now, I didn't even touch on anything IT related. But that's the juice.
Got it.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Austin? Okay. Call to the public. Barbara?
Thank you. Barbara Curtis, 17 Ship Carpenter Square. I had just a couple questions on things that came up. First, on the water tank. When we get the new one, will the old one be taken out of service?
No, they'll be out the 2 valves in place. Right now, we think we're going to at least have 1, potentially 2 altitude valves, in which they will essentially equalize pressure and be utilized conjointly.
And it helps to do pressure control and across the system.
And it's extra capacity as well, right?
Well, yeah, but otherwise we'd have to
Bigger.
then we would need the 1 million gallon tank.
Okay. The Shentel thing, does that mean we're gonna have competition with Comcast finally? Is it the same service area or?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
That's the idea. We're not beholden as a city to have an exclusive provider. We can have multiple franchise agreements. So this is, like, as you said, another choice.
Yeah, that's great. I was interested in the update on the wellhead study because I do sit on the Environment Committee for the city. And one of the things we've been looking at is source water protection. And there was some talk about, we really don't need this in the code because that applied over on the other side of the canal, and that's not drinking water anymore anyway. But it sounds like we may need it in the future because the wellhead protection area may be expanding when we get this wellhead study back.
So two items on that. The canal does protect the well field from saltwater treatment from that side. However, the back bay, Delaware up through Canary Creek and Ebenezer Branch brings it that way. We are putting in at least 2 monitoring wells. Well, no, excuse me. We're putting in 2 monitoring wells and Mitchell Farm is putting in an access point.
We would actually be looking between 3 and 4 monitoring wells, potentially 2 that we would include or put in now, potentially some that exist today. And then we have the Mitchell Corner one, which it was, I believe, a condition upon their approval.
Yeah, the county, we had asked for, and the county did make that a condition for the Mitchell corner, that they put in a test well there that was accessible to us because we want to be able to do the testing. So we are concerned about that, and so is the state.
Okay. Another question on the plumbing code issue with the hose bibs and stuff. If the plumbing code is just for new building, right? It doesn't require retrofitting, if I'm correct. So would that be a city code issue, or is there any way to get a requirement for retrofits?
It could potentially be, it could potentially be added in the floodplain ordinance when you talk about, because there is something in there talking about you've renovated over 50%, then you have to meet floodplain. So it could possibly be incorporated that way.
Okay. That's helpful. And finally, the tour on Friday, what's the details on that? The tour, Wolf Neck?
Oh, I guess just for the general public, we're going with the counties agreed that we can get a tour of the Wolf Neck facility. Now, it's the existing facility, so it's not about infrastructure. It's about what does the site look like and to give people a feel for it. Austin, have we closed? Or
3:30, we'll meet on site. It's off of Wolf Neck Road. It's at the very end. So the road right next to Wawa, which would be the Wawa on the left-hand side if you're going south. You'll have to, it's kind of weird. You'll have to go through the intersection and then make a U-turn and come back. It'd be the U-turn, I think, at Atlantic Liquors, and then circle back around. And then you'll go make the right, go all the way back. And I believe Hans will have the gate open and then we can all go back there similar to the other one.
and are there any open slots still, or?
So we're sitting
10.
10 people from the public, and then we'll have, that would be 10 people from the public, and then whoever attends from the board and the city side. So it'd be I suspect between 15 and 20.
Wow.
You can also take your bike.
You could, but it's also going to be raining. So hey, pick your poison.
It's okay.
Yeah, because it is, right, it's accessible right off of the bike path.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Call to the press? I don't see Aaron online.
Aaron's otter. Is that it?
That's not his real one. That's the
Otter box.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.